Have you ever wondered why a man, even one who seemed certain of his own power, lingers with unspoken admiration for the woman he could never bend, never conquer, never make small? It is because somewhere deep in his psyche, far beneath his practiced dominance and carefully constructed ego, he recognizes her as the mirror of what he has not yet mastered within himself. To meet a woman who cannot be broken is to face a living embodiment of inner strength, of unyielding self-possession, of a soul that does not submit to fear or manipulation. And while his surface may resist, his shadow secretly bows. She is the archetype of resilience woven into feminine form. Not the loud, abrasive defiance that seeks attention, but the quiet, immovable presence that needs no validation to confirm its worth. A man's ego, fragile though it often pretends otherwise, is accustomed to finding cracks in the walls of others. He tests, he prods, he pushes, not always maliciously, but because instinct compels him to discover where power truly lies. And when he finds himself standing before a woman who remains calm, intact, untouched by his storms, his unconscious feels both threatened and magnetized. For in her silence, he hears the echo of his own unfinished battles. You may not realize this, but every time you refuse to compromise your core essence for approval, you awaken something primal in men. It is the paradox of the unbreakable. He cannot own her, yet he cannot forget her. In the philosophy of Jung, the anima, the feminine image within a man's unconscious, becomes activated by such encounters. This woman, unyielding and whole, reflects back to him the very qualities he has repressed. Her presence is not merely a challenge, it is a summons. She reminds him that strength without cruelty exists, that softness without weakness exists, that sovereignty without arrogance exists. And though he may struggle against her, in secret he admires her because she reveals to him his own incompleteness. Men are not only drawn to beauty or charm, they are drawn to mystery, to the kind of inner fire that no amount of control can extinguish. The Stoics spoke of this power in different terms: the unshakable soul, indifferent to fortune, rooted in virtue. Seneca wrote that true freedom comes when nothing external has power over you. A woman who embodies this truth becomes a living lesson, not by preaching, not by demanding, but by existing as she is. She teaches, without words, that power does not always roar. Sometimes it simply stands, unmoved like a mountain against the storm, and men, whether they admit it or not, bow inwardly to this silent authority. But this admiration is not gentle. It often arrives dressed as conflict. He may resent her, accuse her of coldness, label her as too much or too difficult. These are defenses, projections from his shadow. He sees in her the independence he secretly fears he lacks, the integrity he betrays in himself, the strength he has never fully owned. In Jungian terms, she embodies the self he has not yet individuated into. She becomes a mirror that strips away his illusions, and that is both unbearable and irresistible. For what man can look directly at his own shadow without trembling? And what woman can remain unmoved, knowing he wants to bend her so he can escape his own reflection? This is why the woman who cannot be broken must understand the strange dance she evokes. It is not that she is unlovable. On the contrary, she is unforgettable. It is not that men despise her. They revere her, though they may disguise it with rejection, silence, or disdain. For admiration takes many forms, sometimes applause, sometimes attack. What matters is not his behavior, but his inability to erase her from the inner chambers of his psyche. She lingers there as proof that a human soul can remain whole, even in the face of pressure, seduction, or abandonment. She embodies what Jung called individuation, the wholeness of the self that refuses to dissolve into roles, masks, or expectations. And you, listening now, Perhaps you know the taste of this role, though you did not choose it. Perhaps you have wondered why some men pursue you with intensity, only to retreat when they realize you will not bow. Perhaps you have carried the loneliness of being too much for the fragile and too strong for the insecure. Yet beneath the weight of their judgment lies their deepest truth. They admire you because they could not break you, and that means you carry something inside that they secretly long for, a fortress of self-worth that no storm could breach. There is a certain silence that follows when a man realizes he cannot fracture the spirit of a woman. It is not the silence of victory, but of recognition. He may walk away, he may curse her under his breath, he may even attempt to diminish her with words meant to wound. Yet beneath the surface he knows he has touched something immovable, something beyond his reach. And this knowing lingers. It unsettles him at night. It colors the way he looks at other women. It forces him to confront the truth that not every soul can be subdued. Some are sovereign by design. To understand this dynamic, one must look deeply into the architecture of the human psyche. Jung spoke of the shadow, that hidden part of ourselves we reject, repress, or project onto others. When a man encounters a woman who cannot be broken, she often carries within her the shadow qualities he has refused to accept in himself: independence, resilience, an unapologetic refusal to betray her core. She stands as the embodiment of his unintegrated strength. And while he may feel threatened, what he actually experiences is the ache of his own incompletion. She is a mirror, not a wall, yet to a man who fears his own reflection, that mirror feels like a prison. This is why such women often evoke extreme reactions. Some men will idolize her, placing her on a pedestal as though she were untouchable, almost divine. Others will attempt to destroy her image, labeling her arrogant, cold, or unworthy of love. But both responses stem from the same root: admiration cloaked in fear, for he sees in her what he could never summon within himself. And what is admired most deeply is often also resisted most fiercely. Consider the Stoic view. Epictetus taught that no one can harm your soul without your consent. The woman who cannot be broken embodies this wisdom without needing to recite philosophy. She demonstrates that dignity cannot be stolen, that peace cannot be forced, that identity cannot be rewritten by external hands, and this terrifies men who depend on conquest for their sense of worth. They are accustomed to victories in the realm of control, of seduction, of dominance. But here, in her presence, they encounter a battlefield where their strategies fail. It is not a war of power, but of essence. And essence cannot be conquered. You might not see it, but when you hold your ground, when you refuse to justify, explain, or shrink, you ignite something ancient in the masculine psyche. It is both wound and cure. He is drawn to you like a moth to flame, knowing the flame could consume him, but unable to look away. He might test your silence, push against your boundaries, try to force cracks in your armor. But the more you remain centered, the more he realizes that you are not playing his game at all. You are operating on a plane where validation is irrelevant and authenticity is everything. That plane is foreign to him, and yet it calls him. Jung understood that the feminine, when unbroken, becomes not just a partner, but a portal. She opens the door to the man's own inner journey, if he dares to walk through it. But many do not. To walk through that door means confronting all the illusions of control, all the masks of masculinity, all the unhealed wounds that drive his need to dominate. It is easier to dismiss her, to walk away, to seek someone more pliable. Yet even as he leaves, he carries her with him. In his unconscious, she remains, the one who would not bend, the one who revealed his limits, the one who reminded him that strength and softness can coexist without collapse. And what of you? Do you feel the weight of being this kind of woman? It is not an easy path. To be unbreakable often means to be misunderstood, to be admired in silence but challenged in public, to be longed for privately but resisted openly. But within that tension lies your true power. For every man who tries to erase you, there will be one who awakens because of you. Not because you fought to prove yourself, but because you stood as yourself, unwavering, unashamed. It is this paradox, that men secretly admire what they cannot break, even as they resist it, that reveals the deeper truth. They are not admiring you merely as a woman. They are admiring the archetype you embody, the self that cannot be fractured, the spirit that cannot be owned. And though they may never say it aloud, though they may bury it beneath excuses or avoidance, their souls whisper the truth every time they remember you. The admiration men carry for the unbreakable woman is not a fleeting sentiment. It is etched into the unconscious, resurfacing long after their lives have moved on. A man may marry, pursue new passions, or drown himself in endless distractions. Yet when solitude returns and silence presses in, he remembers her. Not necessarily her face, not the details of her laughter or her words, but the feeling of standing before a force he could not bend. That memory stirs something eternal, something both haunting and inspiring. It whispers, "There exists a freedom I could not take, a strength I could not diminish." This is why men, even in their pride, secretly admire the woman who never broke. For her essence speaks to the hunger within them to become whole. Jung described individuation as the journey of becoming one's true self, stripped of masks and illusions. A woman who embodies her full presence without apology lives as a beacon of this individuation. She has faced her shadow, walked through her own fires, and emerged with scars that shine as proof of survival. And that is what men recognize, not perfection, but integration. She is not unbreakable because she never knew pain. She is unbreakable because she made pain her teacher instead of her master. Most men, consciously or not, sense this distinction. They feel the difference between a woman who resists from fear and one who stands because she has nothing left to prove. The first can still be swayed with persistence, flattery, or pressure. The second has transcended the game entirely. She knows herself, and therefore she cannot be manipulated. That kind of sovereignty is not common. It is rare, and rare things awaken reverence even in those who pretend indifference. You may wonder why such men, even while admiring this archetype, sometimes turn to women who are easier to control. The answer lies in their relationship with their own unconscious. To truly honor the unbreakable woman would mean to rise to meet her, to integrate the parts of themselves they have long buried. It would mean no longer living in ego, but in truth. And that is terrifying. Many men would rather admire from afar or even scorn in public than risk the death of the false self. So they retreat. They choose safety. They surround themselves with companions who never force them to confront their hidden shadows. Yet still, secretly, they remember her. The Stoics would call her the embodiment of ataraxia, a soul untouched by chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the true measure of strength is remaining unmoved when the world shifts around you. This woman, the one men could not break, is a living reminder of that principle. She does not boast of her resilience. She does not advertise her scars. She simply moves with quiet gravity, as though guided by something eternal. And that quiet gravity unsettles men because it reveals how little control they truly have. There is also something deeply paradoxical about her allure. On the surface, a man may say he wants a submissive partner, someone easy to manage, someone pliant. Yet his soul yearns for the very opposite, a partner who mirrors his hidden strength, who challenges him to transcend his smallness, who awakens the fire of his own forgotten potential. That yearning is not always conscious, but it drives his fascination. He may resent it, but he cannot deny it. For what man can look into the eyes of someone unshaken and not feel both humbled and drawn? And you, perhaps you know the loneliness of this path, the isolation of being admired yet resisted, desired yet feared. To be told you are too much by those who could not carry their own weight, to be accused of arrogance simply for refusing to betray your own dignity. But remember, these reactions are confessions, not truths. They reveal more about him than about you, his fear, his projection, his unhealed wounds, all spilling out in the face of your sovereignty. His ego may scorn, but his soul admires. Every woman who walks this path must understand that she becomes both catalyst and mirror. She awakens men to their deepest longing for wholeness, even if they deny it. She forces them to confront the fragile scaffolding of their false identities. And whether they rise to the challenge or retreat into excuses, they cannot erase her impact. She is the memory of freedom, the reminder of what is possible when one refuses to break. This is why, long after the storms settle and the noise fades, men return in their thoughts to the woman they could not bend. She may never know it. She may never hear the words. But in the silent chambers of their psyche, her presence lingers like an unextinguished flame. The unbreakable woman is not forged in comfort. She emerges from fire, from betrayals that would have shattered others, from disappointments that stripped illusions away, from nights of solitude where the only companion was her own shadow. To become the woman a man cannot break, she first had to break herself, willingly, consciously, through the brutal work of self-confrontation. She faced her fears not by denying them, but by sitting in their presence until they revealed their true form. She discovered that fear was not her enemy, but her teacher. That grief was not her prison, but her initiation. And, through this, she cultivated a power that no man could ever take, because it was never granted from the outside. Men sense this, even if they cannot articulate it. They sense that her strength was not built on arrogance, but on integration. She carries no mask, because she has already confronted the parts of herself that once demanded disguise. Jung would call this individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole by embracing both light and shadow. And when a man encounters such a woman, he is struck by the realization that she has already traveled a path he himself avoids. He admires her not because she resists him, but because she embodies something he has not yet dared to embody. This admiration, however, does not always appear as praise. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like hostility. Sometimes it looks like endless attempts to test her, to see if perhaps beneath her calm there lies a hidden weakness. Yet each attempt only reveals what he already knows. That she does not shatter, she does not bend, she does not give her essence away. And so, though his ego may rage, his unconscious bows in recognition. You see, men live in constant tension between ego and soul. The ego wants control, validation, certainty. The soul longs for growth, transformation, freedom. The woman who cannot be broken forces this conflict into the open. She denies the ego its victory, but in doing so she offers the soul a glimpse of liberation. That is why he cannot forget her. She represents the threshold he has not crossed, the courage he has not claimed. In her, he sees what he could be, if only he stopped clinging to the false security of power over others. This is where admiration turns into myth. Even years later, long after he has built a life with someone else, he recalls her not as a passing figure, but as an archetype. She becomes the woman who showed him the truth of himself. He may never confess it, not to her, not to anyone, but in the silence of his thoughts, she remains the one he could not erase, the one who reminded him that strength is not about control, but about freedom from it. From the Stoic perspective, she embodies the sage's serenity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The unbreakable woman is this principle incarnate. Her strength is not rooted in the illusion of controlling others, but in mastering herself. She is proof that no matter the betrayal, no matter the loss, no matter the storm, one's inner core can remain untouched. This is why men secretly admire her, because she is what they most desire to become, though few admit it. And yet, for you, the one who walks this path, there is also danger. The danger of being misunderstood, of being cast as cold or unreachable. The danger of carrying the projection of others who cannot fathom that strength and softness can coexist. But remember, you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to embody the truth of your own being, and those who cannot see it are simply not ready to face themselves in the mirror you hold up. Men admire the unbreakable woman not because she rejects them, but because she teaches them, without words, the greatest lesson of all, that the soul is unconquerable. And when the noise of life falls away, when their defenses collapse, it is that lesson they remember. It is that lesson that humbles them. It is that lesson that makes them whisper, even if only in silence. She was the one I could never break, and for that I will never forget her. What unsettles men most is not that the unbreakable woman resists them. It is that she does so without effort. She does not clench her fists. She does not raise her voice. She does not play a game of endless defiance. She simply remains as she is. And this effortless sovereignty is what bewilders them. For men who have built their identities on conquest, the realization that some territories cannot be claimed is both humiliating and awe-inspiring. They discover that the power they thought they had over others dissolves in the presence of someone who has mastered herself. This woman is not interested in domination, nor does she need to prove superiority. Her power lies in detachment. Not indifference, but the freedom that comes from knowing her value is not negotiable. She does not seek to win. She simply refuses to lose herself. Jung would say she has married the opposites within. She has met her inner animus, integrated it, and no longer seeks external approval to confirm her wholeness. This is why men find themselves circling back to her memory, again and again. She embodies the individuation they secretly crave but fear to pursue. You may not realize how many eyes linger on you after you leave a room, how many men carry your silence with them like a riddle they cannot solve. They will not tell you this. They may mock you. They may dismiss you. They may claim you were too difficult or too distant. But every dismissal is a veil stretched thin over admiration. For admiration is dangerous. It destabilizes their illusion of control. To admit they admire you is to admit you expose the limits of their power. And men rarely confess their limits. The Stoics knew this truth well. The only true strength is mastery over the self. A woman who cannot be broken is the living emblem of this wisdom. She is not controlled by the tempests of desire or the storms of rejection. She moves with the calm of someone who has already faced the worst within herself. Men sense this calm and cannot explain why it rattles them. They are accustomed to women bending, to emotions spilling, to identities shifting under pressure. But here is one who remains whole, and that wholeness is a mirror to their fragmentation. This is why some men oscillate wildly around her, drawn in, then pushing away, then returning again. It is not about her behavior. It is about their own inability to reconcile what she represents. She embodies the soul's potential for freedom, and to stand before freedom while still shackled by ego is unbearable. Yet unbearable things are also unforgettable. So they remember her, they admire her, and secretly they envy her. But for the woman herself, this path is both blessing and burden. She carries the projections of countless men who see in her what they cannot see in themselves. She is called too strong by the weak, too cold by the insecure, too distant by those who fear intimacy. Yet, in truth, her strength is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the courage to remain authentic even in vulnerability. She does not close her heart. She simply refuses to trade her soul for attachment. And this distinction is what separates her from those who bend. If you are this woman, you must remember, your task is not to convince others of your warmth or to soften your edges for the comfort of fragile egos. Your task is to remain, true to the self you have forged through shadow and light. For the right man, the man who has walked through his own darkness, who no longer fears his shadow, will not see you as too much. He will see you as the mirror of his own wholeness. He will not seek to break you. He will seek to stand beside you. Until then, let the silent admiration of those who once tried to conquer you serve as proof. Proof that your sovereignty is not only real, but undeniable. Proof that strength is more magnetic than submission. Proof that your existence alone is enough to awaken men to the truth they cannot ignore, that the soul, once whole, cannot be owned. And so the story comes full circle. The woman who could not be broken is not remembered for her defiance, but for her freedom. Not for her resistance, but for her authenticity. She becomes legend in the minds of men, not because she gave them what they wanted, but because she showed them what they lacked. And in that unshakable clarity lies the final revelation. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.